Hello everyone, I'm Gui Valente and this is the Valente Brothers podcast. I'm joined by Pedro.
It's a pleasure to be here once again. Thank you very much for joining us.
And my brother Joaquim Valente.
Hello everyone.
Today we're going to talk about the pandemic that we're living through, opening our second season of the Valente Brothers podcast, and share with all of you our experience, how we have been facing this very difficult situation as far as our jiu-jitsu school, the most difficult moment in the history of Valente Brothers. I'm sure that many of our viewers and listeners are also going through hard times. But if there was ever a moment where we had to implement, we had to put in practice the philosophies, all the great lessons that we received throughout our lives, is now. And I would like to start listening to our brother, Pedro Valente.
Yes, you described it very well. There's a moment for training, and there's a moment for actual practice, for action. And this was an opportunity for us to really exercise many of the lessons that we have learned throughout our lives. And now it's easier as we're speaking about it, but I remember that in March and April and May, we felt a lot of pressure, and it was definitely not easy. Different types of pressures. And I am convinced that our philosophy really kept us standing and allowed us to adapt to, instead of resisting to the pressures, yielding and adapting and making the best of it. And I must say that I am very proud of what our organization did throughout this time and how we came together as a community to help each other, to support each other, to be safe and strong.
Yes, I remember very well the beginning of the year. I had returned from my trip to Europe where I was visiting with my wife, our in-laws in Europe. And still in January, I really enjoy some news websites that cover world news. And I began to hear about this virus and how it was an issue in China initially. And day by day, you could notice that the situation was becoming more and more serious. And I think we can also talk about how sometimes being so connected to the news, how that's important and how media plays a vital role in our society, but also how that sometimes can lead to anxiety and sometimes over worrying about situations. And we went into February, and at that point, the situation was very serious. And of course, we got to March, and we decided to close our school before our county's mandate. Why did we do that?
Because at the time there were a lot of unknowns, and we wanted to make sure that we were not doing anything to contribute to the spread of the virus and to possibly people becoming ill because of the virus. So one of the most important concepts of the jiu-jitsu philosophy is jita kyoei in Japanese, which means mutual welfare and benefit. So not being selfish, not thinking exclusively about our wellness, our well-being, but thinking of the community at large. And we felt that closing the school at that time was the right thing to do. Closing the school for in-person classes, because we never stopped teaching. We immediately organized an online platform.
Which, by the way, that's something very interesting. as I noticed what was happening around the world, even talking to a colleague of ours that had a school in China, I began to think that something like this could happen also in the United States. And we do not have a online presence platform. We did not have at that point. So I thought of one of our social media platforms, and I decided to start a community with our students before this ever happened. I think a month before or more, and I started to invite students to it. So that, as you said, we closed the school on a Saturday, and Monday, 2 days later, we taught our first online class.
And it never stopped. And that was a way not only for our students to continue to learn the art of jiu-jitsu, but also, more important than that, during that time, a way for us to stay connected. As most people were isolated in their homes, we were able at least to speak to each other, to connect with each other, and to continue to exercise, to practice from our homes.
Because at that point, we were facing the unknown. I think that the government, in great part, scientists, we just did not have enough information to know exactly what we were facing. Hospitals possibly were not prepared. They just did not know if they were or if they weren't prepared exactly for what was coming in their direction. So it was very difficult for us to have to close down, to stop our work in person. And we will talk about that later, the experience of teaching jiu-jitsu online and from a distance. But I think, Joaquim, and we have spoken about this in prior episodes, but fear is something natural. Many times it's connected to intelligence at certain levels. You can choose to describe fear in different ways, right? Our teacher, Grandmaster Hélio Gracie, did not like to use the word fear for fear. But I think, Joaquim, you have really talked about in the past, and because of your expertise in the area of tactical self-defense, if you can talk to us about the relationship between fear and knowledge.
Absolutely. I think that, our dad always spoke about looking for ways to solve problems. And I think that all of us, when we question our ability to be able to do something, when we feel uncertain, and I think the time that we're living through is really a great example of that, we think of ways on how we can improve ourselves to be able to deal better with these moments. And there's no better way than to seek knowledge. And seeking knowledge will give you the chance to be able to anticipate problems and situations that can cause fear easier, and will also give you the best way to be able to deal with them. And that's with all kinds of fear. And fear is interesting because when you start talking to different people, and sometimes we do this in our classes, we allow students to talk, and we like students to engage and to share their scenarios, their situations. You see that people sometimes fear bugs. They fear, airplanes, and where for other people, they enjoy it so much. And fear also changes because if you think a lot of times as a kid, there was nothing more cool than to be in an airplane and to see the plane take off and to be able to, sometimes look at the cockpit, even sit in the cockpit. And at other phases of your life, flying really becomes something that brings anxiety and brings feelings that we try to avoid and not have. So by putting yourself in that situation, seeking knowledge, and creating repetition with knowledge and with experience in those scenarios, you're going to be able to learn how to deal with those scenarios better. So with aviation is one of them that I always tell friends of mine, if flying is something that makes you feel anxious and makes you feel uncertain about what's happening and not enjoying a trip, take a flight class, right? Get in the plane, seek knowledge, understand how the plane works, the effect of the wing and how the plane can glide and and how the plane is not looking to fall down to the ground.
Yeah.
And
So right now, Joaquim, I feel like we're going through a turbulent flight. And specifically in relation to this, what do you think? What have you done throughout these months, almost a year, to help you cope with the anxiety, with everything that is going on right now in our lives?
well, the first thing is having confidence in our health, trusting that we have prepared our whole life for situations like this. That's why, sometimes when I spoke to friends of mine and other people were very upset. And I'm like, how can you prepare your whole life for a situation like this and now be upset? Don't be upset, right? Embrace the situation. And it's hard. I know it's something that sometimes we speak about very lightly, and in no way by me saying this, I'm saying that I'm perfect at it. But the first step on being able to take action is actually to talk about it, right? So, the first step, don't fight the situation. Understand what we're going through and look for the best way to go through. But to answer your question more specifically, I think the occupation of your day is something that is so important. If you find yourself home doing nothing, that's when usually negative thoughts are going to go through your mind and you're going to start getting bothered by the situation. If you occupy your day, and that has nothing to do with your job. You can have a job that, forces you to work from 9 a.m. to 5 p.m. every day or even more, but you could have no job and you can still have a very occupied day.
So, but the job helps.
The job helps, absolutely. But I'm just saying, some people work from home. Even before COVID, they were already working from home, and they do a great job of occupying, themselves.
So, Joaquim, what you said is very interesting, and there's a few things that come to my mind. I even took note of a few things you said. What can we do? I think that's a great question when we try to balance this relationship of fear and knowledge. What's in our hands, right? You talked about our immune system. However, you also mentioned, and I describe it the following way. You mentioned the responsibility we have and how we don't want to ever underestimate an enemy. That's very important in the jiu-jitsu culture, in the 753 code. So you don't want to believe that you are a Superman and that you're completely bulletproof. Or do you, Professor Pedro?
It's a balance. Confidence helps. Positivity helps. What you must be careful is that your confidence doesn't become overconfidence and then you don't properly prepare. So we must prepare, we must anticipate, but we cannot be living in fear of our opponent, whoever our opponent might be. We teach self-defense. And when people hear the expression self-defense, they usually think of defending against an assault, against a physical attack. But this pandemic showed us that there are very, very small enemies out there. Viruses, bacteria, pathologies of every kind.
Invisible.
Invisible to our naked eye. And enemies that can be just as dangerous, if not more dangerous, than the enemy that we can face in the street during our assault. And that's why we have a very holistic self-defense philosophy, self-defense approach. Sometimes people ask, why are you talking about nutrition? That has nothing to do with jiu-jitsu, has nothing to do with self-defense. Those people have not yet studied the history, the roots of jiu-jitsu, and they don't understand that the reason why nutrition and other lifestyle habits make part of jiu-jitsu, are an integral part of jiu-jitsu, is because self-defense includes being healthy.
There's internal and external self-defense.
And when Abraham Maslow drew his pyramid, the hierarchy of human needs, he talks about self-preservation, about security, about safety, the importance of feeling safe. He described that as a human need. And feeling safe against diseases is also very important. Many people have anxiety because they're scared of what could happen to their health. And so that's why we believe that not only for the body, but for the mind, it's very, very important to live life according to a philosophy, according to principles, where we know that we're doing our best. Because every disease, be it an infectious disease or a degenerative disease, has two underlying causes. You have the predisposing causes, predisposing your genetics, your genes, and these you cannot change. Maybe you can, but those are with you. And then you have the triggering causes, which have to do usually to your life, with your lifestyle. In an infectious disease, then you also have the virus itself, acquiring the virus. But even your lifestyle can affect that.
But the virus usually needs to be welcomed.
A fertile ground.
Yes.
For it to grow. And that includes usually a weakened immune system. We believe that our immune system is designed to fend off, to fight off all these diseases if we are in a perfect state of health. It's difficult to be in a perfect state of health, but the 753 code that we organized has that purpose, to teach our students how to become as strong as possible, mentally, physically, and spiritually.
Emotionally.
We come from generations of doctors in our family, and we learned a lot from them, especially our father. And our medical philosophy, if you may, even though we're not medical doctors, but our medical philosophy is a very holistic philosophy. Holistic, the whole person, mind, body, and spirit. And if we take care of the whole person before you are exposed to a disease, then the chances of you surviving that disease are much greater. And now with this pandemic, we see that happening. Statistics show that people with underlying conditions are more likely to succumb to the disease. People who are who are unhealthy are more likely to have problems with this disease.
And it's all about the statistics, right, that have proven to be so important during these times, with the efficacy of vaccines, with the chance of individuals having serious illness because of the virus. And this is another aspect of this statistic that is used by governments to even choose the ones that should get vaccines first. So it is very important. And we feel that sometimes it is not being given the right amount of attention as it should be.
Yeah, we grew up hearing a phrase from both our teacher, Grandmaster Helio, and our father, which is that in Portuguese, não existe doença, existe doente. There are no diseases, only sick people. Obviously, it's an exaggeration, but the point is that you won't get sick if you're strong. But the reason why you get sick is because your body is not well. Are there exceptions? Yes, and we know that. But once you feel strong and you're doing everything you can to be able to stay well, then it gives you the confidence that you can live your life without fear, which doesn't mean that you don't take precautions, which doesn't mean that you don't take care of other people, that you don't think of other people who might not be as healthy as you. But it means that at least you can live life with confidence and with your head up.
And I think Professor Gui touched very quickly on the emotional side. And that's something that is very important, because just like we teach in a self-defense situation that your attitude in that confrontation is so important. In a situation like this, your attitude is also very important. If you live by fear, if you live questioning your immune system and your ability of your body to fight diseases and to be healthy, that's going to play an effect on that situation. And I think, we can connect all this, Professor Pedro, with how important it is for you not only to be healthy with nutrition and what you put into your body, but also with your mind. And I think that's also very connected to what I said earlier about occupying your day. And a lot of times when we talk about the 753 code, people ask, but what's the end purpose of the 753 code? And I'm sure we can all give the same message in different ways, but one of the things that I say mainly is you're seeking happiness. If you're able to follow the 7, the 5, and the 3, and you're trying to constantly improve on them, you're going to be able to find more happiness in your life. And that reminds me of a country which is in the Eastern Himalayas, Bhutan. And in Bhutan, they created the Department of Health. They created it's called the Girls' National Happiness, or I think that's it, GNH, I believe, something like that. I can look it up. But basically, to be able to measure how happy all the citizens of this country are, and how they believe that that has a direct effect in the health of all their citizens. And they do everything they can for people to live, a more happy life. And so it just shows how much that's connected to having, being healthy.
Absolutely. Happiness is wellness, and wellness is happiness. So the purpose of the 753 code, in my mind, is to create wellness, which leads to a happy life. But it also works the other way around. It's a two-way street. The happier you are, the more healthy you will be.
And actually it is. It's gross national happiness. And they created, I think, 9 objectives they had. And the first one was psychological well-being, life satisfaction, positive emotions, and trying to avoid negative emotions.
Yeah, and as we talk about this approach to life where you want to be as strong as possible, you do everything, again, that you can do, right? I always think about before a test, the feeling that you studied, you did your homework.
Correct.
And everything that happens will happen, but you did your part. And
Did your best.
You did your best. And it's not only just about how you do, but understanding that when you do your best, you'll also be more prepared to recover. I was trying to find something that Jigoro Kano said. Actually, I found something that Abraham Lincoln said. It's not about how many times you fall, but how many times you get back up. So not only you prepare to be protected, but you also prepare to recover. And if something bad happens, you recover and you have that confidence. When Joaquim also mentioned the importance of occupation, I think one of the greatest challenges about this whole crisis is that you have many times to stay home. You were forced by the government to stay home. And how do you do that? There are ways, of course, but understanding that many people were forced to stay home in small places, in small apartments. How do you do that? There's another saying that I thought of. Our father used to often talk about it, which is the difference between medicine and poison is in the dose, What can you say about that, Professor Pedro?
Yeah, that you shouldn't go to extremes. You shouldn't exaggerate, right? For example, what would be an exaggeration? Oh, I'm invincible. And then I don't wash my hands. I don't take any precautions. And one of the great things about our philosophy is that we were already doing many of the things that people started doing because of the pandemic. I have the 753 code book here, which was written quite some time before the pandemic started. And I'm going to read from the book. Studies show that simply washing your hands 4 times a day will make you significantly less likely to develop a respiratory infection. So here we don't talk only about washing the hands. We talk about being clean. We talk about the care that you should have with your body. So hygiene means that you have self-respect, that you care about your body, that you care about yourself. And so when people started talking about washing the hands, about being clean, even about wearing a mask to protect others, those things came to us very naturally because they are already a part of our philosophy. Now we're dealing with a serious disease, but who wants to get a cold? Who wants to get any type of disease? So if we know that washing our hands, that being clean, goes a long way in avoiding respiratory infections, in avoiding disease, then why not do that on a regular basis?
And just to touch on the mask situation, because we've been wearing masks from the beginning in our school. Everyone wears a mask. To train, everyone wears a mask. And if there is a 0.00001 chance of the mask protecting someone, protecting our training partner, for us, that's good enough, and we will wear the mask. So until someone proves to us that wearing a mask offers absolutely no protection, we will, of course, until it's required and until the scientific world believes it's a good idea, we will continue to wear a mask.
To me, the idea that the mask doesn't work at all is senseless. To me. I can understand when people say it's not going to give you full protection. Nothing does, by the way.
We will talk about that.
But the mask...
Briefly, we will talk a little bit about Stoicism.
But the mask itself, in my mind, gives you some protection. It's less droplets.
Yeah, viral load.
Well,
So the viral load is going to be smaller.
I understand, but then let me just ask you a question. In life,
play devil's advocate.
a little bit. In life, if you think about risk, and if you're trying to minimize risk at all, then someone might say, let me just stay home because there's less risk of something happening.
That's exactly the
So how do you balance? So that's my question to you, because I was having this conversation with a friend the other day, and this person was saying, I don't like to hike. And I'm like, really? Why? Hiking is nice. You connect to nature, you're exercising, and yeah, but there's a chance there could be snakes. There's a chance that you could, slip and fall as you're hiking up the mountain, and I said, yeah, but everything you do in life, there is a risk, right? On the end of the day, I think you have to think of, is there a purpose in what I'm doing, and is this healthy? If this something, if whatever we're talking about is something healthy and there's a purpose, yes, there is a risk, but we're willing to take that risk to be able to fulfill our objective in that activity.
I agree with you 100%. I think in many ways you already answered the question, but I think it's
But connecting to masks, the question is, before there was also a chance, but by possibly using a mask, you're avoiding getting, a cold or flu or other diseases.
I don't think so much by using a mask you're avoiding. By using a mask, you're protecting others. Let's talk about Japan.
Yeah, it depends on the mask also.
Yes. In Japan, when people are sick, it's cultural. They wear a mask. Why? Because they feel that by wearing a mask, there's a smaller chance that others are going to get that illness from them.
Well, but then there's also...
that's why the Japanese wear it.
Correct. And then there's a movement that defends that you should only wear a mask if you have symptoms, like the Japanese used to do and the Asians used to do. So I believe that we're not going to talk about...
I just want to answer Joaquim's question.
Mask.
Not about the mask. I want to answer the
Correct.
Philosophically speaking, about balance.
Yeah, I think that's the key word.
Because you have to think about risk to self, risk to others. Then you have to think about the downside of whatever it is, the mask or whatever it is, to you, or any downside to others. And then you have to think about what the purpose, as you said, is. And you have to put everything on the scale, and you have to find... Now, everyone is going to be different, but you have to find what works for you. So what's the risk to you of staying home, for example. Staying home and not getting out of the house. What's the risk to you if you go out? What's the risk to others if you go out? Then what's the downside to you of staying home? Is there a downside to others of you staying home? And then what's the purpose of that action? When you think about all those and you put all of those together, then you can make a good decision. If getting out of the house gives you a 90% chance of dying, then you might not get out of the house. If that chance is 0.1%, then you have to think about others as well. But then you think, what precautions can I take if I get out of the house to protect others? So that's how you must think.
And this is always applied to everything we do.
Sure.
Right?
Because there's always risk.
And sometimes we're faced with hard decisions to take, like in moments like this that we're living through, especially when there's many different opinions, and we hear those opinions in media and social media, and people are talking about it. But if we train to make those decisions and to apply the concepts that we learned in the 753 Code book to the little things in life, then when we're faced with a hard decision to make, we're going to be able to do that in an easier way. A lot of times we see these hard decisions, we say, oh, it's so hard. But if you train in the easy ones, then the hard ones will become easier.
So I think that there's so many examples right now that we can think of that put all of this to the test. And we're talking about some specific ones. But I believe that there is a philosophy that teaches us, and it's very similar to the samurai philosophy, which is Stoicism. I think that both of you talked about the balance in accepting risk and understanding risk and also protecting yourself for potential risks. And Professor Pedro, you've talked about Stoicism in the past. I know that that's a subject that you enjoy studying. How does many of the Stoic principles apply to the moment we're living?
As you said, Stoicism is similar to the samurai philosophy, and what brings them together? The fact that it's two warrior philosophies. And warriors are willing to put their lives on the line for a greater cause. So both the Stoics and the samurais, they made peace with the idea of dying. They understood that the moment that we die, and all of us are going to die physically, that moment will represent the now and not the future. When you die, it's now. It's not in the future. And so it's now, just like this moment that we're living right now. It's the same. And so we must be prepared for that moment. We must be at peace with that idea. And we can't live in fear of that moment. And that is designed to allow us to always do what is right. Doesn't mean that we're going to take unnecessary risks. But if there is a purpose, a higher purpose, then we're not going to stop ourselves from doing it because we are scared to die. This is easier said than done. But the Stoics believe that through constant work, mental work, where you're making yourself comfortable with that idea.
And as Joaquim said, practicing with the small things in life, you can prepare better. And I think that what we're living through right now is the best test or the best situation. And when we say best, of course, we understand that this is a tragedy for so many families and for so many of us that have lost friends in this for this terrible disease. But yes, we have to try to be positive and we have to keep fighting.
And a lot of people feel that because of the tragic nature of this pandemic, we are not allowed to express positivity. And one of the things that Joaquim just mentioned with respect to Bhutan is that they avoid negativity. They avoid negative feelings. So we learn from Hélio Gracie that everything that happens is good. and everything happens for a reason. And the reason for that philosophy is so that our mind stays positive, and in a positive mind, we have less stress. And stress is one of the most destructive things for our immune system. So the more fear we have, the more stress we have, the more vulnerable we are to the virus. So talk about a vaccine that everyone can take before they have a chance to take the actual vaccine, which is your natural vaccine, which produces a natural defense against any virus, which is taking care of your wellness. Mental wellness through positivity. Feel free to express positivity in this time, to say that you're making the best of this time, to learn, to grow, to fight the good fight. Take advantage of this time to be inspired to be more healthy. Think of all the habits that you have in your life that are destroying your health. If you're scared, then take action to make yourself healthier, because that will make it less likely for you to have a problem from this virus. Turn a negative into a positive. Fear is a negative, but it's a negative feeling, which creates stress. But by turning into a positive, you can transform your emotions. And that's something that will be extremely important in your ability to stay immune.
And it's important to say that when Professor Pedro says avoid negativity, to be able to turn it into something positive, you have to face it.
Correct.
You have to talk about it. You have to dilute the information. You have to, analyze and go through it to be able to turn that into good. And find good in everything. I think that's the summary from what Professor Pedro said. If you can find good in everything that happens to you, you're going to be prepared more to be able to see these moments.
And break the habit of complaining and whining. We see that a lot in our society. People whining, people complaining. Oh my God, this is so bad. Oh my God, this is no good. This is very destructive. Break away from this habit.
Which is the opposite.
Positive.
Which is the opposite, right? And it's important for us to know that this happens and people are like this for us to be able to change. Sometimes people see bad in everything.
Correct.
Even in the good things. Even in the good moments. You're out, you're having a good time, and boom, a little thing happens, and now it destroys that moment of peace, that moment of happiness. So what we're trying to do is exactly the opposite. Find good in everything. Be happy.
We have empathy for the 1% or less who succumb to this disease. But we are very happy, and we celebrate the 99% who were cured.
I understand and I agree with what you're saying, but I don't like to use the percentage figure too much when we talk about death, because for the person who loses a loved one.
But we should still celebrate the ones who are not lost. That's the point.
100%.
Not only mourn the ones. That's the thing. The focus on the people who succumbed. We have total empathy, as I said, for that 1%, whatever it is.
For those that have lost their lives or
but we
families.
Celebrate the 99% who survived. And we must celebrate, and it's okay to celebrate.
100%. And I think it's really about the balance between positivity and responsibility. It's not because you're going to be responsible or positive that you're going to be irresponsible. In closing, you mentioned Abraham Maslow's hierarchy of needs pyramid. We really like to study Abraham Maslow, a great psychologist in the 1940s. And you talked about how the base of the pyramid is our physiological needs. Without those, obviously, we cannot survive. And right after that comes safety needs. We have to feel safe. And I think that's really the challenge right now. Are we safe? Right? But right after that, and of course we practice jūjutsu to feel safe. So the practice of jūjutsu is so important.
But let me say something real quick about that, which I think is so important. We do feel safe, but we do not feel 100% safe. Life is not guaranteed for anyone.
Yeah, that's Stoicism.
We don't know if we're going to be awake tomorrow morning. And so we can't live in fear because there's always a chance. We can't live in fear because someone tells us that there is a chance that something bad is going to happen. There's always a chance that something bad is going to happen. And that cannot make us stop living our lives. We must be responsible, as you said. We must think of others. We can't be selfish, but we must live our lives. We must continue to live our lives in a positive way.
So we have the physiological needs, we have the safety needs, and then we have belongingness and our love needs, which is all about relationships. We need relationships. This last weekend, following the news again, I like the news, I noticed that the talk about variants of this virus are popping up. Europe just stopped Brazilian flights from coming in, visitors from Brazil, who have been in Brazil, of course, from the UK, from certain parts in Africa. And I'm positive. I think that the vaccines and we will be out of this very soon. But there are specialists, there are scientists out there also warning that this could take a lot longer for us to be completely out of the woods. And you just talked about Stoicism. You just talked about how we cannot live our life. There is no silver bullet that gives us the ability to take care of a situation like this or any other situation that gives us that certainty, 100%, like you said, that we will wake up tomorrow morning. We don't know. I think life teaches us that there's only growth through discomfort, through instability. You need to feel instability in order to grow. But when we, in many ways, when we're stopped, barred from feeling that we belong to a group, we're stopped from having our relationships. We can only have it through technology. How can that affect us? And how can we learn from all of this so that we continue moving forward and we continue fighting the good fight, as you said?
There have been many studies on the reasons for longevity. There's even a book called The Blue Zones, and they have studied these blue zones, these so-called blue zones, places where people live longer, and trying to find common elements that would somehow contribute to these communities having longer lives. And the book mentions several things: nutrition, exercise, activity, but the most important one, according to them, is positive social interaction, a sense of belonging, of feeling that you are a part of a community, of a group, of a family, of a team. So we are social animals, and we are wired to interact with each other. And not only with our immediate family who lives in our household, but with more people. And we must be around people. This is extremely important for our mental sanity and for our health. So that's where we have to apply this concept of risk assessment and what are the downsides to certain actions that we take in order to feel safe. And staying home, and I'm not against staying home at certain moments. We did that for a little while. But we also must...
Not for a little while.
We must also weigh in the downsides. And as a society, we must find ways to come together, because in our holistic medical philosophy, at least that's the way I think, there is a vaccine, as I said, which is being as healthy as we can possibly be. And that comes from exercise, that comes from nutrition, that comes from hygiene, that comes from sunlight, vitamin D, so important. Breathing fresh air. It comes from our spiritual wellness, moral values, ethical values. It comes from our mind and our emotions. So if I'm not doing those things, if I'm not exercising, if I'm not interacting with others, then in my mind, I am increasing my chance of becoming sick. I'm increasing my vulnerability. And if I think of others, if we recommend that they do the same, then I'm increasing their vulnerability as well. So that's where we must find a balance, and we must make sure that we are not destroying our health in the process of trying to stay safe against a virus that will only get us seriously when our health is not good.
I think that we're in a moment now that we understand this whole situation much better. I think, as I asked Joaquim earlier about the balance between fear and responsibility and fear and knowledge, I think now we have knowledge. I think that we have the elements to be more responsible, but to continue living our lives. I think this is really one of the greatest lessons that we have learned throughout this process. We are also different. We're living in different circumstances. I think that now this has also been something that through knowledge we have better elements to make better decisions. And I agree, we cannot expect that in order to live our lives, to go back to our normal lives, we need this certainty that we are safe, we're 100% safe.
That's an illusion.
This is an illusion that maybe because of everything that was talked about, even because of the media, not with bad intentions, but this has been created. And again, we might have to live forever with this new risk.
Or other risks that could come even
way.
bigger,
Even bigger.
which our ancestors went through to be able for us to be here today.
Correct. So I think that's the message. We're very interested in all of your opinions. And please let us know. Don't forget to subscribe to our YouTube channel if you are watching us on YouTube. If you are listening to us in the different platforms, also subscribe to our channel, Valente Brothers. Like our video and send us questions. Use the comment section. Thank you so much, and we'll see you very soon.
And remember, our goal is never to create irresponsible behavior. Our goal is to create peace of mind and a healthy lifestyle. Thank you very much.
And since you gave me another opportunity, I think it's important for us to also thank our students.
Yes.
That have been supporting us throughout this. Many of them here training. Those that chose not to train, they continue to support our school. That's very important for us. Without you, Valente Brothers would not be here today. And we are very, very thankful for each and every one of you. Also, every time I see a new student, actually, new students have joined the school, but when I see an old student who I had not seen since March come up through our stairs, it's such a great feeling.
Yes.
Right? I feel goosebumps.
Yes.
And we're seeing that more and more. Some of our students that live with their parents and wanted to wait for the vaccine, and now they're finally being vaccinated, and everyone is starting to come back. Everyone now understands how to live with this and to fight through this. And let's continue to do this together, to stay together, and to fight the good fight together. Thank you so much.
See good in everything. Take care.
Thank you.